Good morning, Amy. How are you?
Good morning, Cindy. I'm pretty good. I didn't sleep that good last night. My brain's not quite firing on all cylinders, but I'm going to do my best today.
You know what? Showing up is 80%. So we're here, we're doing it. We're talking about something that we both see a lot in our practices. And that is when we check in with people about what their diet looks like. And we've talked about how we both see this, how people tell us that they feel the need to eat every 2 hours, or their belief system is that eating every 2 hours is good for them. And we're here to talk about that today and why that is actually an indication that there might be a miss in metabolic health, and how that can, if you stay in that place for too long, how there can be downstream effects to your health in addition to that. So I think that this is such an important topic just because I lived it. I think I've told you the story how the joke was that I was the hangry monster and that people wouldn't hang out with me unless I had snacks.
Yeah.
And that was because I was in a place where I did have to eat every 2 hours. If not, my energy would drop, my mood would drop. I would feel really lethargic and I'd feel really cranky. Like I've had to make so many apologies. Like, I'm sorry for what I said when I was hungry, like was just my motto for so many years. So let's break down what exactly is happening. So do you want to hop on and just talk about it from a metabolic standpoint?
Yeah. And I just want to say that I also experienced that as well, where I had to eat every 2 to 4 hours and I would get nauseous.
That's
nauseous and tired. And
it impacted my mood.
Yeah, my mood got in my mood too. It was like I wouldn't be as I could get really irritable. I remember calling my husband sometimes and being, "I'll bring me a snack," because I would have like back-to-back patients, and I'm like looking at the clock, like in a panic. So
Exactly.
this like intellectual and emotional response to not having food availability within a time frame because I knew I was going to get sick if I did. Literally, like that's just getting sick because you're not eating, like feeling sick because you're not eating all the time.
Yeah.
So
Anyway,
anyway,
it feels like a cage.
yes, you don't realize how freeing it is until you aren't like that anymore. It's until you resolve that issue, and then you're like freedom, and you're not even thinking about food, and your energy and mood is stable. But so the metabolic piece where it starts, I think, is with insulin resistance, which is when your body produces a hormone called insulin from the pancreas to deal with sugar coming into the body. It basically pushes the sugar into the cells so your cells can use that sugar for energy. And so we can be resistant to insulin when we're just producing it at such a high frequency that the body stops hearing it. It's like when you go into a room and there's a bad smell, you're like, "Oh, there's a bad smell in here," and you open a window, but maybe after a few minutes you don't smell it anymore, but somebody else comes in the room and they're like, "What is that smell?" And you're like, "Oh, I don't even smell it anymore." It's like your body has this ability to like ignore signals when they're happening too frequently. And
Definitely.
so I think people are eating so frequently at such a high frequency that their cells are either starved of energy, number one, because they're not getting the sugar into the cells, or the other reason is they're burning that energy way too quickly because sugar burns hot and fast. So it's burning hot and fast, and then the cells are like, where's the next hit? Where's the next hit of energy? And they're not going to those cells are not going to tap into fat storage as energy because they're not trained, or they're not programmed at that time to do that anymore, because you've been eating at such a high frequency for so long that your cells need time to like adapt to fat burning. So you're just like high frequency eating with this hot fast burning fuel, or you're more getting to the other end of things where your cells aren't getting enough energy in to burn, so you're hungry. You're just like kind of hungry all the time anyway.
Yeah, and I think that
Sorry.
why that's such a big deal, and that relates back to the conversation we just had last week about metabolic flexibility. So that's how both Amy and I navigate this with our patients, is really teaching people and their bodies to be metabolically flexible. And just a reminder of what that is we all innately have the ability to burn sugar, glucose, carbohydrates. I'm going to put those all in the same category for this conversation. We have the innate ability to burn that for fuel. And I call that like the gas car, like it burns fast, it burns dirty, it gets the job done. And if you're metabolically trained to do so, you can burn fat for energy, like you were saying. Is like, okay, so for me now, the experience going through certain protocols and being somebody who's metabolically flexible, what is the other side of that, right? So what does that look like? So people have a juxtaposition of where we're going here. So what that looks like is I'm actually eating only 2 to 3 meals a day, and I'm not snacking in between. So why are we doing that? Because I'm going to eat, I'm going to get my body the fuel it needs. Insulin's going to fire, the other digestive enzymes are going to fire, other hormones are going to fire, and my body's going to have time to transition and digest.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to do that again, 4, 6, 8 hours down the road. So a couple things here is having the capacity to be able to have a backup fuel source. So I don't have to eat every 2 hours, because if my body uses the glucose carbohydrates that I just had, my body can go now, has the ability to access the fat storages for energy, which is all what we want, right? We want the fat storage to be as a fuel and not just stored on our bodies. So that's one thing. But the second thing that I see why this is so important is asking the question, what is happening to our digestive system when we are eating every 2 hours? In my opinion, and what I've seen with my patients, is you're never giving your digestive system a break. And so it is just always firing, always working, always on the go. And of course, that system's going to just get tired. And we see all sorts of complications run from there. So if anybody, anybody's struggling from digestive things, a lot of common things that I see in my office is like IBS. The first thing I'm thinking is, whoa, what could happen if we gave your body the opportunity to have a break between meals and to have longer windows of time at the end of your day where you're not eating, to allow the digestive system not only to rest, but to heal? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we slough off like cells almost every 24 hours, and they're being regenerated in our digestive system every 24 hours. So the body needs a break to do that process, but you eat every 2 hours, the body doesn't get to do that.
It doesn't get to do that at all. And I think the epidemic of IBS, and what we now know IBS is mostly, well, there's certain scientists that believe, like Dr. Mark Pimentel at Cedars-Sinai, who's a GI specialist, he believes that most IBS is actually 90% of it is SIBO, which is an overgrowth of bacteria in the small intestine. But it's like the epidemic of IBS has definitely has come in tandem with and correlated with this high frequency eating that we have been doing for the past, really, since the 80s.
Yeah.
But I think it's gotten worse in the past 10 or 20 years, and very bad in the past 10 years. So yeah, it's like you need gut rest. You need gut rest. You need metabolic rest.
Yeah.
When energy's not coming in, I tell my patients, like, look, it's like letting the janitors come in and sweep the place out and clean everything up, and let your cells, that autophagy, where your cells actually get to clean house, your gut gets to clean house, and that migrating motor complex in the small intestine that moves things along, that works best when it's empty. Like it gets to move debris, not food, but just like debris and different things along out of the system. And so, yeah, I think gut rest is imperative to digestive health and overall health, in terms of, because I had someone, I was talking to a patient the other day about high frequency eating and energy toxicity. Right? It's basically what that is. You just have too much energy coming in all the time, you can't detox if you're
Exactly.
just like, if your body has to handle your organs, your cells, everything, your brain has to handle energy all the time for every moment you're awake. If you're
Yeah.
either digesting or you're eating. So,
And when you're digesting and you're eating, healing isn't happening.
right.
Your body only has an X amount of resources and energy. And so we do so much healing, obviously, when we're sleeping, right? But that's why we also talk about like this window of time. You know, my recommendation that I give to most patients is making sure that you're done eating at least 2 hours before going to bed. There are some caveats where I would recommend something different. But for most people, I think ideally 3 hours, but if you can get to 2 hours before you go to bed. So that's by the time you go to bed, you're at least a lot of the digestion's already happened. And then while you're sleeping, you'll finish it. And then you'll have anywhere from, 4 to 6 hours that your body can focus on healing. Versus I know a lot of people, we get those nighttime munchies, and you have to really look about it. It's just like, am I eating because I'm actually hungry? Did I eat enough during the day? So I'm now trying to get all my calories in right now. Is this an emotional thing? Am I eating because I'm stressed out right now? So really looking at that. But I think when giving people tools of like, where do you start with this, right? It's like, again, it's like all of this sounds really great. Metabolic flexibility, sure. But where does like a lay person start from here? And that is always, if you can just get those 2 hours before you go to bed, and also see how much better you sleep.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I'll track my heart rate variability. And if I eat less than 2 hours before I go to bed, like if I eat and then I go to bed within an hour, my heart rate variability that night is kind of trashed. And that makes sense
Oh,
because my body's not resting. I'm not going into
yeah.
a parasympathetic state. Even though digestion does come from the parasympathetic nervous system, my nervous system is focusing everything on digestion, not allowing the rest of my body to rest. So that's like one tool that I recommend people to do, is that if you can make 3 hours, like you're a rock star, but 2 hours, stop eating before 2 hours before going to bed and just see how it feels. I think that's, we're not here to tell you what to do. We're here to create an invitation for you to start experimenting with your body, because every body is different. But the difference between a healthy person and a non-healthy person is taking that ownership of what's going to be best for your body. And unfortunately, when it comes to our health, nobody's here to save us. There's no outside entity, doctor, organization, program that's really going to save you without that deep understanding of what's happening. And that's really what our whole goal is to give people those tools to have a better understanding of what's happening in their body. Amy, if you were to give somebody one tool, what would your one tool be?
So usually it is exactly what you said, like bookending that your fasting time. You're fasting while you're asleep, right? Like you said.
Yeah.
And one point I wanted to make too is that if you can't fall asleep unless you eat before bed, that's a problem.
Yeah.
Or if you're waking up in the middle of the night because you need to eat to get back to sleep, that's a problem.
Yeah.
So that's a high indicator that you are on the road to a more metabolic dysfunction. But anyway, I have them bookend their day. Like I'll do like, can you do 2 hours of just not eating before bed, preferably 3, and start there. And maybe when they wake up, they're hungry, or maybe they're not hungry. So I say, well, why don't you eat when you're hungry instead of just eating because you feel like you have to? So maybe
Yes.
skip breakfast and they push their fast like an hour or two further from what they normally would eat. The other suggestion that I often make is if you're going to eat breakfast, have it be your macronutrients be more protein and healthy fat, leave out the carbs. And the other thing I wanted to say is I'm not demonizing carbs. I said high frequency and carbohydrate eating and sugar burning. We're not demonizing carbs here. I also had this conversation because I'm always having this conversation with patients.
Always.
So part of why we're doing these podcasts, because we want to get the information and record it so we don't have to be saying it all the time. But it's like, she was like, well, I don't understand, like, all right, I'm eating, like, she was eating some kind of carbohydrate at each meal, which was 3 meals a day plus snacks, eating before bed, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, it's not like carbohydrates are bad. It's just the abundant availability of carbohydrates and the fact that many of them are highly processed, because our bodies are ancestrally are built to only have carbohydrate availability and abundance for part of the year.
Mhm.
So we're like living in this mismatch of this primitive body in a modern world with abundant food abundance and frequency. And, carbs are quick, easy, cheap. You can't carry a hamburger in your back pocket, right? But you can carry some chips. You can carry some crackers, even your almond flour, gluten-free crackers that you think might be healthy. But we got something to say about that, but we'll do that in a later podcast. But it's like, so I had tried to have them, if they can't fast in the morning, do some protein and healthy fat. What does that look like? Maybe an avocado with a chicken patty. Maybe like rethink breakfast. Eat a salmon fillet with a little avocado or some egg. Have some, I don't know. It's just leave out the carbohydrate frequency if you can during that window of time that you're eating.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think also making the distinction, because a lot of times what people push back about is, but this is how I keep my metabolism going. This is how I keep my metabolism firing. And I just want to name that that's a bit of a misnomer. Just because you're activating your metabolism every 2 hours is actually not going to the speed at which your body processes food, your metabolism, the way that your body produces energy, fire hosing it every 2 hours with that fast fuel, that's actually eventually going to slow things down. And if you're slowing everything down, that's when we get into that weight loss resistance. And then the fallacy is, it's like, okay, well, I'll just eat less and move more. And I don't know, you might be able to make a difference on the scale temporarily with the eat less, move more, but most people will end up putting the weight back on. Again, when we look from an ancestral standpoint, the body doesn't want to dramatically drop weight. It has to be something that is happening slowly over time. And then again, that difference between, you can get the number on the scale to change, but are you breaking down muscle and bone and losing weight, or are you getting rid of fat? Most people I work with want to get rid of fat and they want to maintain their muscle and their bone. So actually eating every 2 hours, even though we've been told, like, keep your metabolism firing, that's how you keep your metabolism going, that's a mistake, unfortunately.
It's actually the biggest farce, and it's criminal to me, because I know it sounds dramatic, but that idea came from the low fat movement of the 80s and the 90s, because we were eating highly refined carbohydrates and everybody was freaking hungry.
Yeah.
So they were eating highly refined carbohydrates at a rapid frequency. And so your body was telling you at that time, oh, I am hungry every 2 hours. So you're getting like the confirmation through your physical symptoms that you are hungry every 2 to 4 hours. That means I do need to eat frequently. But it's actually detrimental, and you need to be using other energy sources to help you get through the day. And it's breaking your metabolism. It's actually breaking you.
Yeah. And that other energy source, thank you for naming that. And just to give some light, it's like that other energy source is fat. And it's like our body, why does our body store fat? Fat is excessive energy that our body has stored for a later date. That's the purpose of it, right? So depending on how much fat you have on your body, that's all excessive energy storage. And what you and I both teach is the ability to access that energy storage and then reactivate that pathway of using fat for energy, which what Amy and I are both trying to point out is most people, 88% of people, don't even have access to that. And then people hop online and then they're going to be like, I'm going to do keto. And then you all of a sudden wipe out all carbs of your diet. And then you get, your keto honeymoon lasts for a couple days or a couple weeks, and then you crash. And again, that's why this is a bit more complex than a Google search is going to be able to teach you. And that's why both Amy and I offer services to be able to help people walk down the path of this health. And the last thing I want to say on it is again, just how awesome and miraculous our body is. It's like once your body can turn this switch on again, it's kind of with you, which has been like one of my biggest motivating factors of not only the experience of my own body, but teaching people is this is like, you have to put in a little, some initial effort and energy at first. And it's uncomfortable at first because it's different. But if you can sit through the discomfort of that, there is a freedom on the other side. There is a freedom of just eating breakfast and being able to work my entire 8-hour day and not even think about food, not be hungry, not be cranky, not have to apologize for what I said to somebody. Like it's absolutely, it is a gift that you really give yourself.
I think that's a really good note to end on. I mean, you're right. It's having that trust and faith in your body that's been lost because
Yeah.
you're like hanging on to having to eat every few hours or else you're going to feel like you're going to drop dead. It is like this liberation. Oh, my body can do this. I just have to, like Sydney was saying, there's a process you go through. And as health coaches, and wellness coaches and professional health providers at the same time, we help guide people, the individual, and how it's going to work for them and help them develop the steps that fit into their life so they can be successful. And that's because that's the way you got to do it. This cookie cutter keto, everybody do keto, everybody do carnivore, everybody do whatever, vegan, you know, there's a precision to this that is necessary in order to be successful.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's every body is different. That's why
Yeah.
you can't Google search your way to the answers here. But again, our goal is to, that just to summarize, it's like the tips that we gave you today are try to end eating for your day 2 to 3 hours before you go to bed, and have your breakfast be protein and fat, and just leave out the carbs just for an hour, just for 2 hours. Like that's going to actually help teach your body how to move towards that fat burning place, which is exactly what we want. So, we'll be coming with you for more.
Yes. And then one last thing I'll say is,
Bring it.
sometimes people are like, oh no, but I want that like flavor in the evening or whatever and it's like a lot of people use sparkling water or flavored sparkling waters or like fruity flavored teas.
Yeah.
Just end with that too. Like,
no, I love that.
This is like the
extra tool.
Right.
Dropping one more tool. You're welcome.
Right. This is the way we like ask, okay, how we develop the tools that are going to work for the individual. So
yeah, I love it.
Anyway, we'll end there.
Right. Reach out if you have questions or if there's any topics you want us to cover. We're here. We are looking forward to sharing more. So thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Hi, Kitty.
That's Rocky.
Hi, Rocky.